What is up, all you great and glorious denizens of podcast land, especially all you rock and rollers? If you are not all about the rock and roll, I don't know what you're doing here. You're still welcome. We're all inclusive. I'm the Maestro Kevin Crane, welcoming you in the day after Thanksgiving. It is Black Friday. Somehow that sounds so rock and roll. Maybe a little heavy metal, but still, we welcome you in to the latest and the greatest episode of the Fortress of Rock, your podcast home for anything and everything involving the music that we all love, classic rock and roll, 60s, 70s, 80s, even into the early 90s, and yes, we even dabble in music from the last 20 years a little bit. I said dabble. That's about all we do is dabble. Paint with a very fine brush when it comes to anything from the 2000s on. Now, if you've never been here before, if you've never listened before, again, welcome. We have 4 distinct segments each and every week that cover the past, the present, and the future of classic rock and roll. Segment 1 is about current news in the world of rock and roll. We call it News of the World. It's a tribute to the late, great Freddie Mercury and his band Queen. Lots of different things to discuss this week, of course. Usually here in segment 1, News of the World, we talk a lot about tour updates and, unfortunately, health issues and the passings of people in the world of rock and roll. But before we get to that, keep in mind, again, it is Black Friday. Put those devil horns up in the air, as you wander through Walmart or wherever and however you shop. Be kind of hard to put up the devil horns for Amazon because they really wouldn't see you. But you know what I'm talking about. And it's not the same as it used to be 15, 20 years ago, where people were fighting in the aisles for the $5 toasters or the $100 televisions. That doesn't happen all that much anymore. I'm sure it's still happening. I'm sure we'll still see videos posted on social media and the internet about fights and assaults and arrests. But just keep in mind, for our purposes here, it is Record Store Day. Black Friday. So it's pretty late in the game here. If you're listening to this, it's the end of the day, evening on Friday night, November the 28th, 2025. If you've got a record store nearby, a local independent record store, maybe you can still sneak in the door before they close. If you didn't wait in line, and I've already in years past went off on how that is just the most ridiculous and pathetic way to reward your fans, is to make them wait in line when we all know the record store involved, unless you're in New York or in California, only has 2 copies of the most in-demand vinyl pressings that everybody's going to want on Record Store Day. But you still got time, maybe if you're listening to this right after it's dropped. So get out there, check out your local independent record stores. That I wholeheartedly encourage, whether it's today or any other day. Go to their website to find out what is out today, what is exclusive for today, Black Friday Record Store Day. TV and streaming. And this could end up coming back a little bit later on in the show. It did not do well at the box office. It doesn't really break my heart. I'm not a big fan of the director, but... And yes, full disclosure, I have never watched the first one, the original Spinal Tap. But the latest installment / incarnation Spinal Tap 2, The End Continues, for those of you who want to check it out. It will be on HBO Max on December the 12th. So, again, I will address this later on as a potential breakdown segment in the future. Jumping ahead a little bit, for those of you, again, I'm trying to give a tutorial here on Black Friday for those who have not checked out the Fortress of Rock before. Breakdown comes next. That is segment 2. That's where we review the new songs, the new albums, concerts. So once again, Spinal Tap 2, The End Continues, will be on HBO Max December the 12th. And I do believe, by the way, I'm always trying to save you kids money. Believe me. If you get out there right now, I believe the special runs through the entire weekend. Again, this is November the 28th, Black Friday. If you get out there right now, I believe if you sign up as a quote-unquote new subscriber, I'm not telling you to cheat the system, but if you have HBO Max at full price and you decide, maybe I should dump this, go ahead and dump it. Sign up under a different email with a different password. And I believe right now their Black Friday special is you can get HBO Max for 1 full year for $3 a month. Not that hard to cheat the system if you really try, kids. If you already have it, my suggestion again, sign out. After you cancel your current subscription. Sign out. Either jump on another computer, or you might have to clear out your memory and your cookies and all that good stuff. That sucks. I know that can be a pain in the butt. Then go in, say, hey, I don't know anything about HBO Max. Sign up under a different email with a different password. Boom. We just saved you some money. And by the way, sticking with television, TV and streaming, everybody out there listening to this podcast needs to bombard the NFL, the National Football League, with emails, social media posts, whatever it takes. Tell Roger Goodell and the morons who run the halftime show for the Super Bowl, hey, did you check out the enthusiasm, the energy, the awesomeness of the halftime show for your first game on Thanksgiving between the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions with Jack White? Yes, you had a little bit of a guest butt-in with Eminem. But that's what a rock and roll halftime show looks like. And we need more of that, Roger Goodell. We need more of that, NFL. Bring rock and roll back to your halftime shows. Stop letting Jay-Z decide everything. I'm sure you can jump out online. I'm sure it's out on YouTube by now. Check out Jack White's halftime show. If you're not a sports fan, that's cool. But if you're a rock and roll fan, and if you are, of course, that's why you're here, Jack White killed it. Yes, he did play Seven Nation Army, but it was awesome. Very limited, yes, halftime show. He played live, which of course is crucial here. No lip syncing involved. And I knew when I heard Jack White was going to do this halftime show, no way is he going to, in his home city of Detroit, lip sync. He is going to go full out rock and roll, live rock and roll. and it was glorious and spectacular. I encourage you to check it out. I want to give a shout out to the band Extreme. Now, Extreme, finally back after all these years. It's been a while. They put out a brand new album called Six. Yes, their sixth album. Very, very good album. I recommend it. But it's been out for a while, and they've been touring for a while, supporting it, and they're still out there touring. This coming summer, 2026, they will be out with Motley Crue and Tesla. I am a child of MTV. I'm sure many of you out there are as well. And no, I'm not talking about Beavis and Butthead and all the reality shows. Now, I love Beavis and Butthead, so that's not a slight. But you know what I mean, all the reality shows when MTV shifted away from music videos and decided to go into all the garbage that they put on now. Extreme, in their clever, these guys are smart. Nuno Betancourt and Gary Sharon, the boys, they are smart. And it might not get a lot of publicity, but we're going to give it a little bit of pub here. Extreme just released a video for the song Here's to the Losers. Why is that significant? Because that is the 12th and final video that they have put out from their album Six. That means every single song on Six got a video. And we're not talking about lyric videos. We're not talking about, these are actual real performance videos of some way, shape, or form. We're not talking about videos that cheat here, visualizers. Kudos to Extreme for taking us back to the 80s in terms of the times when bands would put out 4 or 5 or 6 videos from an album. And Extreme went to, the Extreme, and they have now officially, now it's taken them a while, quite a long while, and that would be expected, to put out a video, an official video, a real video, for every single song, all 12 songs, on their last album, Extreme 6. Way to go, guys. Love it. Awesome. Now, unfortunately, we have to start moving on to some negative stuff before we get to our tour news. A couple deaths to report, unfortunately, in the world of music. Jimmy Cliff, of course, a reggae legend, passed away here within the last week. So our thoughts and prayers go out to his family and friends. And then Jelly Bean Johnson. I know he did some work in producing some R&B and hip-hop music. I believe he worked with Janet Jackson in the past. But for our purposes, most notably, he is known as the drummer for O-E-O-E-O, The Time. Of course, Morris Day and The Time really came to the forefront with Purple Rain and Jungle Love. So again, thoughts and prayers go out to everybody associated with Jelly Bean Johnson. And then we're going to do something that I didn't know if I should do or not because it seems a little morbid. But when we're considering the age of a lot of the classic rock and rollers out there, and I just felt like for 1 week I needed to do this. We're going to just run down some health news with some of these older performers and why they've had to postpone tours, cancel tours, how it could impact the future of touring for these gentlemen. We'll start off with Rick Wakeman. Rick Wakeman, of course, all-time legendary keyboard player, most notably with Yes. Rick Wakeman, I believe, was supposed to go out on the road for a massive tour. Now, we're not talking about arena stadiums, but for an older gentleman, smaller venues, a lot of dates, and then we find out now he had to undergo brain surgery. Now, the news seems to be fairly positive, so that's a good thing. I don't know what the future will hold for him in terms of ever going back out on the road again and performing, but the main thing is taking what time he's got left and enjoying it as best as he can. Ritchie Blackmore. Of course, Ritchie Blackmore, legendary guitarist for Rainbow, Deep Purple. He has been doing what he wants to do, which is playing with kind of a, I hope I don't screw this up, but it's like a folk medieval type band. And if that's what makes him happy, then more power to him. But now, they just had a few dates scheduled, it's my understanding, and after they played one date, he had to call it quits because he was suffering from migraines, and then after seeing a doctor, he was diagnosed with severe vertigo. Now, I'm not trying to make this out to be fun and jokey, but the story that he told on social media about this, I think it's something we could all relate to. And it might actually show how some of these older rock and rollers don't have the money that we all think they do. We've talked about it over the years. Bad contracts. Managers stealing money from the band and the performer. So Ritchie Blackmore's talking about how after the first show of this short tour with his particular little band, which is unique, like I said, and plays a different type of music from what we would expect. They got booked into a hotel where there was an all-night wedding party going on. So they couldn't get any sleep, number one. And again, we've all been there, right? Either we were in the wedding party or we were in a hotel where there was something like that going on. And then number two, which is really oozy and disgusting, is he said, okay, so he's stuck in this room, his hotel room. He's got people running through the halls and all over the place, outside his window, whatever, screaming and yelling. But then his bed sheets are damp and musty and disgusting. And so he just said this all contributed to the fact at my age that I couldn't go on, I couldn't perform, and then, of course, headaches and vertigo ensued. And then a band, and we're going to get to live music here very soon because I came up with something different to do for Breakdown. And we will discuss this particular band in Breakdown, but Great White, their guitarist Mark Kendall, who is awesome, still awesome to this day, unfortunately has stage 4 kidney cancer. Now, everything that he's posted, everything he's said about it is encouraging, so we're hoping for the best for Mark Kendall. He makes it sound like Great White will go on with him in 2026. That, of course, means live shows. One last note before we get to our actual live shows and our concert updates. You remember we talked about this a while back, and this has been one of those ongoing sagas. We've talked about, we've had bands like Journey and Hall and Oates, where we've just had ongoing litigation and issues, either internally or externally, with these bands. The Guess Who comes to mind. We've had these issues here with Don Henley. Now, I have always said, everything that I've read, everything that I've heard about Don Henley, he's not a nice guy. Now, from a fan's perspective, I can tell you he is the greediest SOB out there. Because he was the first, way back in the early 90s, with the Eagles, when they got back together. Remember, Hell Freezes Over? And then they decided, now we get back together and we cash in and we gouge our fans. And they were the first, to my knowledge, to break the $100 ticket barrier. And keep in mind, we're going all the way back to the early 90s. So $100 tickets back then, that was a big deal. Now, stories have come out. I'd forgotten all about his past and the incident with the underage girl and the drug overdose. Now, more recently, we've been talking about this lawsuit, countersuit, involving the supposedly stolen Hotel California handwritten lyrics. To summarize, and I hope I get all this right, Don Henley sued a couple gentlemen, including the former, I believe the former chairman of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, for stealing lyrics from him, handwritten lyrics, his original handwritten lyrics for the song Hotel California. Now, the judge threw that out. If you remember, we discussed this. It's been a while, but the judge threw out the case because Don Henley and his manager, Irving Azoff, their legal team did not submit the documentation that was needed to continue on with the case. Then they turn around, Henley and Azoff and their legal team, and countersue these other gentlemen. No, I'm sorry. The other guys countersue Henley and Azoff for malicious prosecution. See how unbelievably confusing this is? So it started off, Henley and Azoff sue these other gentlemen for stealing the lyrics. That case is dismissed. These gentlemen countersue Henley and Azoff for malicious prosecution, saying that with his celebrity and his pull, his power, Henley was able to convince the legal system, the judge, the prosecution, whoever was involved here, to take these gentlemen back to court. So that's been dismissed too. Because the judge in this particular case said there's no proof that by not showing up on time in the original lawsuit with the required materials, that was in and of itself a devious kind of criminal act to throw the whole case out, but still damage the reputation of these gentlemen. It's just a mess. Just an absolute mess. I hope you kept track of that. I've screwed it up at one point. In any way, shape, or form, how does it all add up? It's all gone. It's all done. Nobody's giving anybody any money or anything. Everybody's been exonerated, so now we move on with our lives until the next stupid, frivolous, selfish rock and roll lawsuit is filed. Whew. Let's move on to tour news. Something a lot simpler. And again, I am sorry for really mixing you up on that Don Henley thing. I am not a lawyer. I only play one on a podcast. The Sex Pistols. Now we know they had to postpone some dates here in 2025. They do have 4 dates set up in the United Kingdom, in the UK, for July and August of 2026. Again, keep in mind the lead singer in this incarnation is one Frank Carter. Because, of course, John Lydon, aka Johnny Rotten, is not participating. We all know about Megadeth. We've talked about Megadeth, the final, again, air quotes, final album, self-titled final album coming out in early 2026. Megadeth, of course, is going to be out with Iron Maiden. But they also are now starting to embark on some shows where they're going to be the headliners. They have scheduled a Canadian tour for 2026 with Anthrax and Exodus. They've got 12 Canadian dates set so far. Those will run in February and March. Now, I will give Dave Mustaine credit for one thing. He's trying to be as honest as possible. I've already told you guys, I'll never trust anybody in rock and roll ever again when they say, this is our farewell album, this is our final tour, all that garbage, forget it. But at least I'll give Dave Mustaine credit. He seems to be taking the road that Kiss took. Ironically, of course, Kiss and their years-long end-of-the-road farewell tour. Mustaine says, yeah, we're going to call it quits here, this is it, but it could go on for 2 or 3 years. So at least he's built in an escape hatch where he can technically keep this going until 2028, and he's not lying to us in this respect. So I'll give him a little bit of credit for that he's come out and said that. Then, of course, the massive, huge tour news for this week is Guns N' Roses. They are coming back to North America, among other places. It is a massive world tour for Axl and Slash and Duff. Guns N' Roses. Now, this is another place where I'll try not to confuse you because we're dealing with 3 separate legs of the 2026 Guns N' Roses tour. We have North America, we have Mexico and South America, and then we have Europe. We'll start off with Mexico and South America chronologically. Guns N' Roses right now have 10 dates scheduled in Mexico and South America. Those run March and April of 2026. Then we move over to Europe. June and July of 2026, there are 11 European dates scheduled for the 2026 Guns N' Roses tour. And then finally, GNR comes back to North America July through September. 18 dates currently scheduled in North America. Again, July through September. Oh, and by the way, just to make things complicated, they're going to sneak in a couple dates in Florida in May. So they go to Mexico and South America, then they come into Florida, then they go over to Europe, then they come back to North America. So I think I did a better job with this than I did with the Don Henley thing. But guess what? You don't have to worry about it anymore because we're done. We just did 30 minutes of News of the World. That is perfect. We are right on schedule for you here. News of the World is over and done. So we move on to Breakdown. Breakdown segment 2, as always, is where we look at the best in new music. Sometimes the worst. Songs, albums, concert reviews. And I alluded to this earlier. We're going to do something different this week. I'm going to break protocol from past years. And it's probably, I would say it's because this was not a great year in terms of me getting out to go see concerts. There were all sorts of issues going on. The first half of the year was nothing. It was a big nothing burger. The first 6 months of the year, I saw 0 concerts. Not for lack of trying, there just wasn't anything that really caught my attention. Luckily, the second half made up for it. Saw a half dozen shows, was supposed to see 7. And then, of course, we had the Stray Cats cancellation at the very end of October that screwed that up. So only saw 6 concerts in 2025. That is about half. That, as you kids know, that is about half of what I would normally see in any given year. And again, I blame the first half of the year. Just nothing out there, reasonably priced. Of course, now we're seeing maybe it wasn't just me. 2026 looks like an absolutely knockdown, drag-out, phenomenal year for concerts. We just mentioned Guns N' Roses. In the past few weeks, we've mentioned Foo Fighters and Journey, AC/DC. So maybe it's a matter of 2025 was just one of those years. Now, I also had the boycott going on with Ruoff Music Center down outside of Indianapolis in Noblesville, Indiana, where I refused to go to that venue anymore, even though I would go there 3, 4, 5 times a year minimum. But they decided to sell out, gouge their fans, start charging for parking, use dynamic pricing for concessions, and just charge the most astronomical, ridiculous prices for tickets. So for the first time in forever, 2025, I did not go to one of, I wouldn't say it's my favorite venue, but it was one of my favorites in terms of convenience, familiarity, and they used to schedule an unbelievable lineup of great rock and roll bands year in and year out, going all the way back to when they opened, which would have been late 80s, early 90s. So what I'm getting at here, this is my 2025 concert year in review here in Breakdown. I do have a couple songs I'm going to review later on. But again, I'm doing something different this year. Usually I would take an episode in mid to late December and I would review my favorite concerts, my favorite songs, my favorite albums of the year. The year-end recap. I'm going to do the concerts early this year, save the songs and albums for December. Because, number one, I don't have any concerts scheduled for December. So there's really no point in holding off on this. But again, it was a very lean year for live music for me personally. So I might as well just take a week where I didn't have anything that really jumped out at me in terms of reviews. We've got a new album next week. We'll review the whole Tenacious D thing. I promised we'll push that off a couple weeks because December we're going to be scraping by until we get to January. And luckily January and February we have a lot of new music coming. So again, half the shows I would normally see. I normally see at least 12. upwards of 14 shows every year. This year only saw 6, and they were all in the back half of the year. So picking my top, usually I would go top 5. It's a lot easier to pick 5 great concerts out of 12 or 13 or 14. This year I would just be a fool. So I'm going to give you my top 5 out of 6? No. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to give you our top three shows of the year. And it's not an overwhelming, incredible list. It really isn't. Because again, this is I will admit it, the lamest concert year for many, many reasons. I didn't get to see a lot. I don't think there were a lot of great tours in 2025. All these things just added up to a very blah year in live music. So my top concert of 2025 was Shinedown and Bush at the Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, Indiana. Now, my friends who I go see almost all of these shows with, they convinced me Shinedown is awesome. You've got to see them. I'd never seen them before. Really hadn't listened to much of their music. The main point for me, the main selling point for this show was, of course, Bush. I'd never seen Bush before. That was, to me, the last great era of music was the grunge era. Which is ironic because in many ways, grunge killed off my all-time favorite musical era, 80s, hard rock, heavy metal, hair metal, glam metal, whatever you want to call it. And it was, I'm going to discount the woman that opened the show. I'm just discounting that. There was a woman who opened the show. And you guys know I always try to encourage smaller bands, local music, all that stuff. But she should not have been sitting there in a major NBA basketball arena performing for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people. She wasn't prepared for it. She doesn't have that type of charisma, that type of personality to project out to that many people. Might have been a lot better in a bar or a smaller venue. But Bush, along with Shinedown, just a great, great show. Both those bands were tremendous, knew exactly what they were doing with the lighting, with the pyrotechnics. They had a great setup where the lead singers could come out into the middle of the crowd on the floor, and even that branched off so you could bring out the guitar player, the bass player. Very, very, very cool show. Very cool show. Now, my second, I will say this, because I am honest, of course. I would never, would I lie to you? As the Eurythmics once famously sang. Would I lie to you? After Shinedown and Bush, there are flaws with all of these other shows. Again, I'm admitting right up front to you guys, this was probably the worst year for concerts for me personally, possibly ever. Outside of the years I was married, we won't get into that. But personally, in terms of the music, in terms of nostalgia, in terms of just hearing songs from the 80s, late 70s, that I grew up with, that I think are some of the greatest, most wonderful, awesome rock songs ever, that's where you're going to go here with me on our second and third best concerts of 2025. I'm biased, I admit. His voice is nowhere near as good as it was in the late 70s and the early 80s, and even then it wasn't the best. But just to hear David Lee Roth perform all the classic Van Halen songs from their first 6 albums. I'm sorry, unless he had a heart attack and died on stage in the middle of it all, this was going to be up there. This will probably be the last time I see him. The closest thing, sorry Sammy Hagar, the closest thing I will get to a Eddie Van Halen tribute, those 6 albums that David Lee Roth did with Van Halen, as I grew up from my teenage years entering college, the most magical, fantastic rock and roll albums ever. My opinion. We're all entitled to our opinion. Do you guys like what you like? I like what I like. There is no right and wrong. Okay, I can say I don't like what you love. You can say you don't like what I love. That's fine. But those first 6 Van Halen albums that'd be Desert Island stuff for me. And that's everything that David Lee Roth performed when I saw him in Gary, Indiana this year. Now, he was smart enough to, number one, do that, not play any of his solo work, not play any of his, he didn't play Just Like Paradise, he didn't play Yankee Rose. He, in a way, without saying it, this was his tribute to Eddie Van Halen. And it was great. It was fun. Again, I know he's not the greatest singer, the greatest vocalist in the world, and he never has been. But he's smart enough to, number one, pick the set list he did, and number two, surround himself with musicians, including 4 guys singing background, who could fill in the flaws and the gaps for him. And he had a great guitar player. Now, he's not Joe Satriani, but still, he had a guitar player who nailed 90% of all of Eddie Van Halen's work. So, keeping with the nostalgia theme to wrap this up, my third favorite concert of 2025 was Warren DeMartini and Stephen Pearcy of Rat up in New Buffalo, Michigan. Same kind of logic applies in most ways here. Number one, Stephen Pearcy never had the greatest voice in the world. It fit for that band at that time. He sounds a little rough and ragged, just like David Lee Roth. But Warren DeMartini on guitar, vastly underrated. Phenomenal guitar player. But what did they do? They played the songs we wanted to hear. They put as much heart and effort into it as they possibly could at their age. Yes, they are all getting old. Both Van Halen and Rat, the original lineups, I never got to see either one live. So a lot of commonality, a lot of links here between these 2 concerts for me. But it was going down memory lane to a time that I thought was better overall, to a time musically that was definitely better than what we're getting right now. So again, my top 3 concerts for 2025, doing them a bit early this year. Shinedown and Bush, far and away number 1. David Lee Roth, number 2. I'll call it Rat. Technically, they can't. I will. Stephen Pearcy and Warren DeMartini. Honorable mention to just a fun show, even though 2 bands that I really do not even come close to ranking in my top 100 of my 100 favorite bands and performers of all time. Yes, I do have a list. I'm a little bit obsessive compulsive in that respect. But Foghat and Starship in Elkhart, Indiana, that was fun. That was just a fun show. Both bands played the songs you would have expected them to play for the most part. That was a really fun show. The other shows I saw, there were issues with sound. There was a fire alarm. That was the Great White and Slaughter show in Shipshewana, Indiana. By the way, I did want to bring back, since we talked about Mark Kendall earlier and how he has got kidney cancer, I just want to point out Great White was really good in that show. Great White was really, really good. So I want to give them a shout out too. And Mark Kendall, especially on guitar, very good, very sharp. All right. Let's move on to our 2 song reviews for the week. And then we will travel back in time with Doc Brown. Now, anybody who knows me knows that this was coming, because the minute this song came out last Friday, and again, it's Black Friday here as we're doing this episode 222 of The Fortress of Rock. Last week when I announced new album news, new song from Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers, you guys should know by now that I was going to be all over that, one of my favorite bands. The first single, Agua Caliente, is out, and I have listened to it, and I have listened to it, and I have listened to it. Normally, when I want to review a song for you guys, we'll just focus on songs, not albums. When I want to review a song for you guys, I will listen to that song at least, let's say, between 6 and 10 times. Minimum. I have already listened to Agua Caliente probably 30 to 40 times. I call up Spotify. It's the first thing I listen to since last Friday. Agua Caliente is typical Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers. It is fun. It is clever. It is catchy. You will get it in your brain and you won't be able to get it out. Does it break new ground for them? No. And I don't want it to, because they are so good at what they do. They are basically Arizona's version of Jimmy Buffett. They are, I don't want to degrade them and demean them by calling them a party band, but most of their songs tend to be fun, talking about bars and women and fighting and drinking. And yes, they do have a little bit of a country flavor to them, but they will get serious on occasion. And even when they do that, a song like Switchblade, they are brilliant, because it's all heartfelt. It is one of those bands, those performers that you connect with, and you understand that they are giving their all. They are giving you everything they've got. They're giving you their honesty. They're giving you their true feelings, good and bad, about life. And Agua Caliente is no different. And yes, I'm sure most of you can figure this out. That means hot water. Woke up in trouble. Woke up in Agua Caliente. Yes, I know, again, you guys love it when I sing. Please check out Agua Caliente. And if you like it, go back and listen to the catalog. All the albums that have come before from Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers. And of course, if you are not aware, Roger Clyne was the lead singer for The Refreshments. No, not the band up in Sweden or Norway that I keep getting notifications from. I don't know how you can have two bands called The Refreshments. You know the Refreshments I'm talking about. They had the massive hit Banditos. Two great classic albums, Fizzy Fuzzy, Big and Buzzy, and The Bottle and Fresh Horses. All those albums, those two Refreshments albums, all of Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers albums are tremendous. Don't listen to me. You'll miss out. I'll feel sorry for you. I'll say a prayer for you. I'll light a candle for you. Whatever you want me to do. But it's going to be on you now, because I have told you. You've got to get out and listen to this stuff. This is some of the best, most fun, most heartfelt rock and roll that's been put out in the last 25 years. And then we have Black Swan. Black Swan is a band that I have jumped on the bandwagon very late. They've been around for a little while. Their third album is coming out in 2026. It's called Paralyzed. I don't know how it slipped through the cracks. Going back to what I referenced MTV when we were talking about Extreme back at the beginning in News of the World. MTV used to be the source for all of us when it came to, we'd have Kurt Loder, right, who would come on and tell us what was going on in the world of music, and we'd find out from MTV when new albums were coming out and new songs were coming out. Now everything is all over the internet. You would think with all of the sources and everybody out there yapping and talking, it'd be easier to find out this information, and it's just not. So I only really discovered Black Swan about 6-7 months ago. Again, they've already had 2 albums out. This is a super group where you've got on vocals Robin McCauley of McCauley Schenker. You've got Reb Beach, guitarist from Winger and Whitesnake, and you have bass player Jeff Pilson from Dokken and Foreigner. The second single from their upcoming album, again coming in 2026, the second single is If I Was King. Now this definitely has a Dio feel to it in terms of lyrics, a little bit musically, but especially in terms of lyrics. I'm not saying they're going all medieval on us, but it's one of those hopeful songs, yet still couched in that Dio hard rock / heavy metal vein. Things we would do if we could change the world if we were king. But then, of course, you sneak in the lyrics about you got the beautiful woman over there that you would make your queen and that kind of stuff. I am looking forward to this album. We will definitely be reviewing this on the Fortress of Rock in 2026. The first 2 songs, of course, now Paralyzed does come out. The new album from Black Swan comes out February the 13th of 2026. The Fire and the Flame is just extraordinary. It is going to be in contention. I will say it right now. We've still got about 2 or 3 weeks left, despite the fact we knocked out the concerts already. The Fire and the Flame is in contention for one of our top 5 songs of the year here on the Fortress of Rock. If I Was King is still top-notch, top-level rock and roll. Yes, it takes me back. Seems to be a theme here for the most part on Breakdown this week. Breakdown, of course, our tribute to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Takes me back to the 80s. Yeah, there's some Dokken in there. There's a Dokken feel. I mentioned Dio. Just great, great hard rock. So I highly recommend both songs this week. I mean, could not beg you more. If you love hard rock or if you love fun, country tinged Jimmy Buffett style music, Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers, Agua Caliente, Black Swans, If I Was King. Check both these songs out, kids. They are phenomenal. And with that being said, I wander off now to the garage here at the Fortress of Rock. Doc Brown awaits as we're going to take our weekly trip back in time to discuss the history of classic rock and roll. Of course, segment 3, as always here on the Fortress of Rock, is I Want to Go Back. Our tribute to the late, great Eddie Money. This is where, again, we look back in history at classic album releases, significant moments in rock and roll history, birthdays, that sort of thing. So I strap myself in to the rock and roll DeLorean. Doc Brown's going to get us up to 88 miles per hour, 1.21 gigawatts. But while he's doing that, I'm going to take care of some necessary business. Now, you're listening to us somewhere, and I thank you, as always, for that. But you have options and you have choices. You can go with the value menu. You can go with the $9 Lux Cravings box. You can go with the Ruth's Chris steak, a la carte, whatever your preferences and choices are. Ad-free, with ads, whatever, but just remember you can always find us on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Apple, iHeartRadio, Overcast, Amazon Music, Castbox, Audible, Good Pods, and YouTube. And then, of course, we have the Facebook page where we do fun stuff every weekend. Just because it's Black Friday doesn't mean we take Black Friday off. Obviously, we're doing the show. And obviously, we're doing on Friday night what we do every Friday night, the Weekend Rock Project, where we give you a word, an idea, a theme, a concept, and you come back with songs, your favorite rock songs that fit the bill. Now, of course, I always try to be a little bit clever every week. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So this week I put it out there. It's out there right now as you're listening to the current episode of the Fortress of Rock. Thanksgiving's over, so of course everybody's all of a sudden in Christmas mode. Obviously, again, Black Friday. So it got me thinking about hiding Christmas presents from the kids. So, I've given you 3 words for the Weekend Rock Project. You can play around with them a little bit. Some weeks I'm very strict, some weeks I'm forgiving. This week I'm going to be a little bit more forgiving. But the 3 words I've given you, you have to give me your favorite songs with these 3 words or acceptable variations. Hide, hidden, invisible. And I will accept a little bit of outside of the box thinking. I'll tell you one word that will not work for me, and I guarantee somebody's going to put it out there, and it will not make me happy because we've already done this in the past. Lost. Do not use the word lost. Lost does not fit the description I'm giving you. A lost item is not a hidden item or an invisible item. A hidden item or invisible item tends to imply that somebody somewhere knows where it is. A lost item, nobody knows where it is. That's why it's lost. Do not use the word lost. That's your weekend rock project. This Sunday, which would be the last day of November, it's New Music Sunday. This is where I will post a video to a new song, a fully produced video, a visualizer, a lyric video, whatever it might be. Just so you guys get new music to listen to, so we get some clicks, some hits on the YouTube page for this video to show the performers, the bands, the artists that we really care and we want more new music. I'm tending right now, I'm not 100% on this, I'm leaning towards going with Extreme and their video for Here's to the Losers to celebrate again something that I'm making a big deal about. The 12th and final video off their album 6. Again, a love letter, to me at least, this is how I'm reading it, to the old MTV years, where they've done videos for every single song on their album 6. Not sure yet. Pretty close to being 100% on that, though. Then, of course, I have sources. I have options for my ideas. I can choose to go to this website or that website or that website to try to dig into the world of classic rock. Some sources are good, some are eh. Throughout the years, I've narrowed it down to these main sources for the ideas, for the news items here on the Fortress of Rock. Again, the opinions, the rants, the ravings, the tangents, those are mine and mine alone. UltimateClassicRock.com, ThisDayInMusic.com. When we have Van Halen news, of course, the Van Halen newsdesk.com, and our brand new source, which tends to accentuate what we get from thisdayinmusic.com, thecurrent.org. So thanks to all of our sources. Without you, it would just make it really hard. I would still do this. It would be in a completely different style and format. And it would be a lot more about me and my opinions. Do you really want that? Well, you should, because I'm brilliant. I'm the Maestro. We're up to 88 miles per hour in the rock and roll time stream. So now, let's get into our birthdays and anniversaries for November the 28th. First up, let's do birthdays. On this day, November the 28th, 1962, Matt Cameron was born. Matt Cameron, of course, drummer for both Soundgarden and Pearl Jam. And you know what that makes him as of this year? He is a 2-time Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee. Rarefied air for one Matt Cameron. And yes, he did spend significant time with both bands. So well-deserved happy birthday to Matt Cameron. Born on this day, November the 28th, 1949, Paul Schaefer. Again, let's go back to the good old days when late-night television actually tried to make us laugh and wasn't all about being hate-filled politics and garbage spewed from idiots. Back when it was Johnny Carson and Jay Leno versus David Letterman. And of course, Paul Schaefer was the band leader for David Letterman. Back when David Letterman was funny. And he hadn't bought into this political BS. Happy birthday to Paul Schaefer. Makes me think about Larry Bud Melman and Chris Elliott. Amazing how people change. Amazing, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. But David Letterman was must-see TV. With the cast of characters he assembled around him, and he himself was hysterical with his dry wit. Now it's a shame how far he's fallen from that with his ZZ Top beard. On this day, November the 28th, 1948, the birthday of Beeb Birtles. No, that is not a character in a kid's show. Beeb Birtles was one of the most important integral members of the Little River Band. He played guitar in the Little River Band during their commercial peak, their classic lineup, if you will, 1975 to 1983. Born on this day, November the 28th, 1943. I will upset a lot of people with this one, not because of the birthday, but because of my opinion. Born on this day in 1943, Randy Newman. And Randy Newman has had a very successful career as a songwriter. Very little direct commercial success. Of course, most well known for the song Short People and I Love L.A. A lot of soundtrack work. Toy Story. Very, very famous for that. But as I was looking today at his, the birthday notices, everybody out there saying this was Randy Newman's birthday back in 1943. But everybody's pointing out the fact that Paul McCartney one time said that Randy Newman is the greatest songwriter in the world. Please. Can we stop with that kind of nonsense? This is why even superstars like Paul McCartney sometimes say things that make you go, I'm not trying to bash Randy Newman on his birthday. I just think everybody pointing out the fact that Paul McCartney said this one time about Randy Newman, and that being the focal point now of how we're supposed to look at Randy Newman. Okay. Again, you guys know how much I care about celebrity opinions, and I've pointed out their educational backgrounds are not the be-all, end-all. They're entitled to their opinions just like you and me, but their opinions don't matter any more than yours or mine. And in this case, that's where I'm putting Paul McCartney's opinion about Randy Newman. Good for Paul. I don't agree. Not even close. And then finally, in birthdays, born on this day, November the 28th, 1929. One of the most important figures in music history. Yes, I will say that. He was the founder of Motown Records. He is one Berry Gordy. If we didn't have Motown Records, wow. What a barren landscape we would have now in terms of music. And I say that mostly positively, a little bit negative, if you want to bring in the world of rap and hip-hop, but the great R&B that we got through Motown in its heyday, hard to top. Let's move on to anniversaries for November the 28th. November the 28th, 2006. We'll do a little deep dive into the National Enquirer here. Salacious stuff. Not really. But Pamela Anderson on this day in 2006. Pamela Anderson, of course, of Baywatch fame. Filed for divorce from Kid Rock after they'd been married for just 4 months. And we all know, of course, Pamela Anderson's history with Tommy Lee, the drummer of Motley Crue. Now she's a serious actress. Okay. Born on this day, November the 28th, 1993. Born on this day. I always do this. I usually pull this off, this ridiculous mix-up between birthdays and anniversaries at least once every episode. On this day, not born, on this day, unfortunately, we're going the exact opposite, doing a 180. On this day, November the 28th, 1993, Jerry Edmonton, drummer for Steppenwolf, unfortunately died in a car accident. Again, I apologize for the mix-up, and I always do it. I'm looking at my show sheet, and I've got these things all broken down and delineated very, very precisely, and yet somehow I still get tongue-twisted and tongue-tied, and I mix up birthdays and anniversaries. On this day, November the 28th, 1992, now, we're going to get a little mellow here, so it's a little bit of outside the realm of rock and roll, so please forgive me. But very significant moments in the world of the Hot 100 Billboard charts and, of course, music history in general. On this day in 1992, Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You was the number one single in the United States. This was the start of a massive, at the time, record-setting 14-week run at the top of the Billboard Hot 100. And of course, if you did not know already, that song was written by Dolly Parton. Might explain how she's got a lot of her wealth. I mean, she's a brilliant businesswoman. I actually had a wonderful Dolly Parton whipped cheesecake as my dessert for Thanksgiving. Dolly Parton, very, very smart woman. And I'm just saying, she's got income streams flowing in from all over the place. Dollywood, now she's got food. And then, of course, I think she made quite a pretty penny off of Whitney Houston singing I Will Always Love You. On this day, November the 28th, 1987, the number one single in the United States was from the soundtrack to Dirty Dancing. Jennifer Warnes and Bill Medley, of course, Bill Medley from the Righteous Brothers, I've Had the Time of My Life was the number one song in the U.S. On this day, November the 28th, 1978, this is one where I say thank you to our news source, thecurrent.org, for this one. The Blues Brothers released their debut / live album. Basically, the Blues Brothers, any album they put out were live albums. Briefcase Full of Blues came out on this day in 1978. On this day, November the 28th, 1964, the Shangri-Las were number one in the United States. They had the number one single in the U.S. with Leader of the Pack. And then finally, November the 28th, 1960, Elvis Presley had the number one single in the United States with Are You Lonesome Tonight? And that's going to do it for our trip back in time. I Want to Go Back is done for this week. Thanks for hanging with me. despite my confusion between birthdays and anniversaries, yet again, as I do each and every week. I hope you look at it as a lovable flaw, and you're not sitting there going, oh, way to go, Maestro, you moron. Doc Brown's laughing because we all know what side he's taking. He's going with the moron side as he pulls the rock and roll DeLorean back into the garage here at the Fortress of Rock. Bad weather coming, kids. So we're going to be locked in for a while, snowed in for a while here starting tomorrow here at the Fortress of Rock up in the upper Midwest. Hopefully won't be quite as bad as they're projecting. Could be a foot of snow. Thank goodness I have got all of this great rock and roll surrounding me that I can listen to. I've got enough provisions to get me through a week or two. Hope you do as well. Black Friday is not the time to go panic grocery shopping with all the crowds in the streets crammed with traffic. But we're pulling the drawbridge up over the moat. Of course, that's something else I always screw up a couple times a year. Pull up the moat over the drawbridge. We're going to lock everything down for the impending storm starting in about 15, 16 hours. Make sure everything is bundled up tight. Make sure the furnace is working here at the Fortress. But we're not quite done with you yet, kids. We've still got one final segment left. We have looked at present day rock and roll. In our first two segments, we've looked at the past. Here now in segment 3 with I Want to Go Back. Now it's time to look to the future. Segment 4 is Wrap It Up, our tribute to the fabulous Thunderbirds. This is where we're going to give you a recap of what I've got on the show sheet for the coming month. I've got big plans, and sometimes they fall apart. Remember Tinker Toys? Or for more modern reference, Jenga? You pull out the wrong wooden block and it all tumbles down and crashes to the ground. That's how you should look at this segment, is that I will give you some ideas of what I'm going to do in terms of what I'm going to talk about, what I'm going to review here for the coming month. And if I decide to change things, it'll all come tumbling down. Now that's a little extreme. It's obviously not earth-shattering, world-changing stuff, but it's important to me. So next week on the Fortress of Rock, our final album review of 2025. George Lynch, of course, famous guitarist with Dokken. He has been the leader of his own band, Lynch Mob, for many, many years. Yes, he told us he lied in saying he was going to shut down Lynch Mob about a year and a half ago. He has not. They are still out performing, and now they are putting out what they're calling their, air quote, final album. It is out now today, November the 28th. It has been released. It is out. You can listen to it on your favorite preferred streaming service. You can try to get a hold of it, a physical copy. I've had some issues trying to get a hold of it. I think I've got one. And again, Amazon just continues to let me down. Amazon is not as great of a retailer as they used to be. All sorts of issues and problems with them. Still the best of the bunch, but deep discount for music now seems to be a little bit better. Lynch Mob's new album, Dancing with the Devil. Their final album, again, air quotes, will be featured in Breakdown next week, episode 223, dropping on December the 5th. Yes, I broke my promise to you for this week. This is what I'm talking about. The House of Cards, the Jenga, the Tinker Toys, it all comes tumbling down if I don't keep my promises to you. And I will always try as best I can. And I will always try to tell you this might not be 100%, kids. So I've moved it back a couple weeks. In 2 weeks now, I am going to review Tenacious D, the Blu-ray, the complete Masterworks Volume 3, which features a concert from, I don't know if it's 4 or 5 years ago, 3, 4 or 5 years ago, before they got in trouble with their frankly disgusting quotes about the president. Also, some more recent music videos, including their medley involving The Who, Pinball Wizard, I believe. And we might throw some songs in that episode to review as well. We'll get to our songs here in just a minute. That will happen on episode 224, dropping on December the 12th. And then after that, then we start getting into possibly, maybe, whether it's 3 weeks out or 4 weeks out, we're going to start getting into our best of 2025 in terms of the best songs of the year and the best albums of the year. I could see that happening on December the 19th. That would be episode 225. If something should come up where we find something newer that we can jump in with and bump that back to December the 26th, the day after Christmas, we might do that. But I'm looking right now, tentatively, for our best of, the 5 best songs, the 5 best albums of 2025. That looks like it would be episode 225 on December the 19th. Now, I mentioned Spinal Tap at the beginning of this episode. I'm not promising this, but I might go back, watch Spinal Tap, the first one, then watch the second one, the new one, The End Continues, and maybe we do a double dip movie review, rock and roll movie review for you before the end of the year. I know there's still a lot of documentaries out there. I could review the Ozzy Osbourne one. I've kind of faded out. I'm not trying to be cruel, but now that we're a little bit removed from Ozzy Osbourne's passing, my interest in revisiting his legacy and his life has kind of waned a little bit. I feel like I know enough where maybe I can find better ways to spend my time. I'm not trying to be mean, again, just saying. Mention songs that we have got to review here before the end of the year. Now, these are all songs we mentioned last week. Remember, we had a huge influx last week of all these new songs, this one final burst before the end of 2025. Second single from Megadeth's upcoming final album is I Don't Care. Shinedown has got a new song out called Searchlight. I just told you Shinedown was the best concert, along with Bush, here at the Fortress of Rock for 2025. Squeeze, Trixie's Part 1, from their upcoming album Trixies. And I mentioned to you, of course, the concept behind that album is these are songs that differed and Tilbrook wrote when they were teenagers that they are now resuscitating, revamping, and reworking. Chris Tapp and the Cold Stairs, Standing Against the Wind. Blackberry Smoke, new song from their just released greatest hits package, best of package. We Got Company. And then, of course, finally, Jay Buchanan, the awesome, tremendous voice behind Rival Sons, one of the best singers we've got out there right now in rock and roll. His solo album comes out in early 2026. First single off of that is Caroline. Again, those are all songs I mentioned last week. We knocked out a couple with Agua Caliente and If I Was King. We will knock out the rest of these before the end of the year, especially because after next week and Dancing with the Devil, we won't have any new albums. Again, that's going to have to wait. We've got Alter Bridge coming out in early 2026. That will be our first new album review of the new year. So what does that leave us with here on Black Friday? That leaves us with the Fortress of Rock charts. Of course, you know, I've told you my history with the Billboard charts and how I would go to the grocery store with my mother, and while she was shopping, I would stop at the magazine rack, the great and the glorious magazine rack, with all its tawdry stuff way up high, hidden. And then it had the comic book, the spinner rack with the comic books. And then I would always gravitate, well, I did read the comics, trust me. And I did kind of go for those true crime magazines. I don't want to get into detail on that. But Billboard magazine, I would always grab Billboard magazine and read Billboard magazine, all the charts. The Hot 100, the Top 200 album chart, and up until the SoundScan era in the early 90s, the Billboard charts I thought were fairly accurate in how they portrayed music. They were inclusive, and in the 80s, in the 70s, we loved that. R&B, soul, disco, hard rock, new wave, punk, anything and everything could be popular and reach the top of the charts. And then they ruined it all. A reflection of society, if you will. SoundScan wasn't great. It's better than what we've got now, but it wasn't great. But then when physical music sales bottomed out and everything went to streaming, that's when they decided, we'll figure out a way. The great and glorious Billboard magazine will figure out a way to gauge music popularity based on streams and this and that and a roll of the dice, and it all fell apart. So that's why now I have taken it upon myself here on the Fortress of Rock to give you our charts. Here now, we're almost 2 years in with the Fortress of Rock charts. We give you our top album every week and our top 2 songs, because 2 is always better and easier for me to pick than just 1. I'm going to shock you again with your number 1 album of the week. I really honestly thought by now Cheap Trick's All Washed Up would have found its way to the top of the charts. I can't do it. I can't. Number 1, you heard the review last week. I wasn't overly impressed with it. And even though I really want to put a full album at number 1 on our charts, I'm going to have to do 3 weeks in a row here. And you guys know I do this based on what I listen to. That's probably 75% of this, and then another 25% is what I like the most. And that's what's killing Cheap Trick right now, is that even if I listen to it a lot, especially when I was getting ready to review it for you guys, I like the EP from Kings of Leon much, much more. And I have been listening to it a lot. Now, again, it's got an unfair advantage with only 4 songs. But for the 3rd week in a row, I am going to have to break protocol again and go with an EP as your number 1 album this week on the Fortress of Rock. EP number 2 by Kings of Leon reigns again, reigns supreme at the top of our album charts. Top songs for this week. I will finally give Cheap Trick some semblance of a break here. While I didn't really like their new album, All Washed Up, I admitted there were 3 tremendous songs on that album. And 2 of those 3 songs, up until this week, had reached the top of our song charts here on the Fortress of Rock. 12 Gates and The Riff That Won't Quit. And now that 3rd song, the title track from All Washed Up, has reached, at least taking a share of number 1 here on our song charts. Along with, you know it, there's no way this was not going to at least get a piece of the top spot. It could be in for a long, long run unless I completely wear it out and get sick of it because I keep playing it 6 times a day. 2nd week in a row for Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers and Agua Caliente at the top of our song charts. So, to recap, your number 1 album for the 3rd week in a row is an EP. It is EP number 2 by Kings of Leon. Your top songs this week are Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers, Agua Caliente, and Cheap Trick's All Washed Up, the song, not the album. And that is going to do it for the Fortress of Rock. Thanks for hanging out. We're just over 90 minutes. Always try to keep it right around a crisp hour and a half for you. You guys know I love you, and I appreciate everything you do in terms of listening. Always feel free to drop us a comment, especially on our Facebook page. Participate in the Weekend Rock Project, please. Take care of yourselves. We're getting just the beginning, I believe, of a very bad, brutal winter up here in the north, the Midwest, the North, the Northeast. All of us, basically above the Mason-Dixon line, are in for trouble, I believe. This winter, it's supposed to be really, really bad. I mean, we're not even going to be into December before we get a ton of snowfall. And then it's just the beginning. So please bundle up. Do what you got to do to keep your family safe and healthy. I care. Please, please, please. Don't kill yourself shoveling snow. Don't kill yourself slipping on an icy sidewalk or an icy driveway. Make sure you've got provisions in your car in case you get stuck somewhere. Granola bars, water, and of course, some really good rock and roll. Always keep your gas tank half full, by the way. Another good rule for winter. I am the Maestro, Kevin Crane. You are who you are, and we love you for that. Hug the kids. Kiss your significant other. Love the ones you're with. The Ayatollah of rock and rolla will do this all over again with you in 7 days. But until then, once again, stay safe, stay warm. Peace out, everybody.